Welcome to Empowered by Iron, hosted by Dr. Kristin from Fiercely Fuel Nutrition Coaching and Mary Morton, PhD candidate and weightlifter. Together, we are empowered by iron. Hey everyone, welcome to Empowered by Iron. This week we're going to talk about a little mishap that I recently had with my cutting journey and kind of talk with Kristin about how to avoid these things or what we can do to help. So I'll just dive right into it. You ready?
Ready.
Okay. So you already saw the title for this. It has something to do with Refeed Day and mishap. So if you are aware of flexible dieting or if it fits your macros or any of that, you may have heard the term refeed. Now, refeed days are days in which your calories and your macros are increased in order to give yourself it's almost like a cheat day, but it's not called a cheat day, right?
Because it's planned. So it's not a cheat, and you have a specific amount of, with my clients, it's a specific amount of carbohydrates over and above what they have during a normal week. Mm-hmm. So they're on a cut in order to... so you guys know that when you lose weight, your metabolism slows down. And so in order to kind of help that process be not as extreme, we add in some refeed days. So it's like the way I tend to do it with people is one really high carbohydrate diet or one really high carbohydrate day mm-hmm. per week. And that helps you just with the sanity parts of cutting weight. And it also helps you, it increases your total daily energy expenditure for the next couple of days. So you're able to train harder for longer.
Okay.
And it helps, it enhances it beefs up your glycogen stores in your muscles so that you can continue training at a really high level even when you're cutting weight.
So it really helps you do a lot of things.
It has wonderful effects. I like to call them unicorn days because it seems impossible that something so wonderful could be so good for you.
Yes.
Okay.
However, as I learned, there are good ways and not so good ways to approach this magical unicorn day. So I had been following my macros, which, by the way, anyone listening who's counting macros and as we discussed previously, and looks on Instagram and notices that people are like, oh, it was so easy today, or you gotta want it, all this macro stuff. Like, it's fucking challenging. All right, guys? Like, I struggle. I'm sure if you count, you've struggled. Like, it's a struggle for everyone. So celebrate the days. Anyway, so I'd been following really good for about 3 or 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. I was spot on. I was really proud of myself, doing really well. And then
we were doing a really slow cut with you.
Nothing
drastic.
Nothing mm-hmm. drastic. It felt drastic, but nothing drastic. I think the drastic just came from actually having to count things. Anyway, so I was doing really good, and we decided one of the weeks to have a refeed day because I needed it. Mm-hmm. So I was feeling kind of a little bit hungry and weak. So we did the refeed day, and typically after refeed days, if you guys have experienced this, you feel a lot more energized. Like, it's really good to have a max out day after you refeed, mm-hmm. or even on the day that you refeed, because you feel really good.
Yep.
I did not have that effect. The next day, I felt like complete shit. I had a really hard time sticking to my macros. I wanted to eat all the things. Like, it was such an uncontrollable hunger. I could have, but I'm weak. I'm feeble. Help me. I can't handle it. I like food, and it took me. I'm almost back to being perfectly on track, but it set me off for about a week because I just couldn't control myself after that.
You were also so you started eating food that you weren't tracking, and you
yep.
just kind of went a little, not completely off the rails, but a little bit off the rails. Like, you were not being strict to your macros.
Right. It's like I took my goal and went bye-bye and threw it out the window.
Right. And so when you told me that happened, what's the first thing I asked you? Do you remember?
Did you have a lot of sugary, simple carbs on the day? And I was like, Basically, all of my carbs on that day were sugary and simple.
So I gave you an extra 100 grams of carbs for that day, and which is a lot of carbs.
This is a lot of carbs.
So I said, did they happen to be simple carbs?
Yep.
Yeah.
Lots of ice cream and cookies.
Right. So you guys probably know this, but we'll just break it down anyway. There's a difference between a complex carbohydrate and a simple carbohydrate.
Tell us more.
Basically, a simple carb is something, it's composed of like really simple to digest sugars, like really basic sugars that are of like no nutritional value to you. So like
Cookies,
sugar and sweets,
ice
and
cream, all the good stuff.
Even white rice or white bread, like all the white stuff. Those are simple carbohydrates. And it's important to note, like, we need those as athletes. We need to have simple carbohydrates in our diet, but there's an appropriate time of the day for that. And it's around your training because your body's going to use them right then and there.
Yes.
And so if you have a decent amount of carbs in your diet and you're putting 60% of them around your carbs, that's still a lot of simple carbs that you can have in a day, but you're using it 60% so it's okay.
60% around your training, you mean?
Yeah, what'd I say?
Around your carbs.
Yeah, 60% around your carbs.
Same thing.
Carbs, training, what? It's the same thing.
Eating is a sport.
So anyway, so that's what a simple carbohydrate is. It's meant to give you sugar to your blood that's usable energy right away.
Right.
It does not have any lasting effects. It causes you to have peaks and valleys with your blood sugar all day. Complex carbohydrates, on the other hand, like whole grains, legumes, vegetables, and fruit, those are complex carbohydrates because they have fiber in them. They contain longer chains of sugar molecules. And those, your body takes longer to break them down, which means that it gives you a more consistent release of sugar into your bloodstream. So it's not this high, it's just kind of like steady. Yep. And it provides you with like an even amount of energy for a longer period of time because it takes your body longer to break it down.
Right.
So basically, complex carbohydrates are going to go a long ways to helping keep your blood sugar stable, and simple carbohydrates are going to cause your blood sugar to really spike and then really fall off. And then the way that we fix that is reaching for more simple carbs, and so you get this up and down all the time. So that's bad. So what that told me was when you were feeling like really fatigued and you were feeling really weak after a refeed day, was that you had some major spikes in your blood sugar going on throughout that day. Yes. And then that caused lasting effects for a really long time for you.
You know, this is not the first time that I've tried to cut. And every time that I start a cut, I get to the point, like, I'm really good, and then I get to the point where refeeds occur. And most people take refeeds as, like, a unicorn happy day. Yeah. To me, they're horrible. And I think that's because I treat it as more like a eat all the sugar that I want. But it's never a one-day thing for me. And until you had said something about that, I never would have guessed. Like, I'm relatively healthy. Like, I wouldn't have guessed that I'm having so much trouble. But, you know, thinking back, every time I've had a refeed day, no matter what coach I worked with, every time I had a refeed day, the next week and a half, I mean, I hardly stuck to my macros because I couldn't recover. For the first 3 or 4 weeks, I didn't really think about food. I was doing really well. I was just kind of eating and tracking. And then the refeeds happen, and all of a sudden, food's all I think about. All I want is something simple, quick, sugary foods for like a long time. You're giving me that look.
No, like, I understand. No, that's what happens. That's the science of it. And some people are more sensitive to this than others. Some people are kind of like carb sensitive, and so this is more likely to happen with them. One thing that you have to look out for, because this is really common, is that you can start to become insulin resistant. If you're carb sensitive, you're maybe on the track of like insulin resistance, even possibly pre-diabetic, not to diagnose you with anything. We need to see some fasting glucose numbers, but it's definitely, there's definitely populations of people that are just a lot more sensitive to carbohydrates. And so for someone like you, we're focusing now on really trying to get all of your carbohydrate sources, except for the ones surrounding your training, from complex sources. How's that going?
Wow. Welcome to Empowered by Iron, the show all about Mary's problems. I mean, it's not going well.
Okay. Because you really like sugar.
It's like I said, the first couple weeks, there was no problem. No problem. And it's all a mental thing too, because it's up and down, which is why I've stayed at the weight I've stayed at for 4 or 5 years, because the same thing happens every single time.
Okay. Well,
you didn't realize you were getting such a problem.
Well, no, but now you know the difference between the carbohydrates, and I'm not saying like I kind of like fall to the end of the spectrum that's a little bit extreme in terms of my diet, in terms of
I got it. For anyone watching that on YouTube, I just pulled a fly out of the sky.
Good job.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm a mess.
That's a plug to watch our podcast on YouTube. You never know what Mary's gonna do. Okay. So I don't even know what I was saying. Complex carbs, simple carbs.
Right.
I tend to be a little bit more, because I was like you for a lot of years, and I really like sweet stuff and would eat a lot of sweet stuff, and that's not good. It's also not good for your hormones. If you eat a lot of simple carbohydrates, it can make you really estrogen dominant, which is not something that's good. That increases your risk of all sorts of things, but hormonal problems, diabetes, breast cancer. So that's not good.
Etc.
Right. So anyhow, I tend to fall to the other end of the spectrum, where I tend not to eat a lot of simple carbohydrates, but it's flexible dieting, and especially if you're cutting, like, work in some treats if you can. Like, that's good. I'm not saying don't have simple carbs ever, like don't have cookies or don't have ice cream, because then we get into what we talked about last time with the restriction and the binging, and even just restricting, like saying, I'm not eating sugar anymore. Like, well, that's not really realistic. And eventually then you're going to have a really big binge. So same thing with you, which is one thing I love about pre and post workout carbohydrate nutrition, is because you can have some really fun treats built in.
That's true. It's the rest of the day that's the problem.
Right.
So, if we're going into a refeed, how should we approach a refeed day? Like, if you had a really ideal refeed day, would it be like kind of your normal day foods, and then some extra complex carbs, or maybe some extra complex carbs and maybe an extra treat? Like, how would you ideally structure that? Like, if you had a perfect day for an athlete, what would you say?
It would look exactly like your normal day macros, except you would just have more carbohydrates. So like, you might have, if you happen to like work like a treat into your macros every day, you might just have like 2 treats, and then a lot more complex carbs. But so I keep the ratio the same for surrounding your workout, that 30% before and after. Okay. So the ratio is exactly the same. It's just, you're just having more of it. So it would look identical, but because part of it is to give you the mental break from quote unquote dieting, I mean, I say, if you're the type of person who really, you like sugary treats, like, and they don't completely mess up your blood sugar for days on end, then go ahead and have those, because that's part of what it's there for.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, refeeds are supposed to be a mental break. Whether they turn out that way or not sure. But
yeah, so that's the other thing, is if it's causing you to have problems, then at some point the benefit is not there,
right. Have you ever had to work with someone that refeed days weren't good for them, or that you had to structure it differently, or do you find that most of your athletes at some point they kind of figure it out? Asking for a
all
friend.
of the above.
All of the above.
Yeah. So some people, we just have to completely cut them out. And it might not be for reasons like what you had. It might be that they are a shift worker and it's just really hard for them to fit that much food in, like if they're working overnight and then they're off for 2 days, and that it's just really hard for them to figure out. It's hard enough for those people to figure out their macros when they're the same every day, and then if we change them, then that's really difficult. So it might be for that reason that we don't do a refeed day. There's a lot of reasons that we don't do refeed days, and they aren't necessary, and that's the thing, is like they're awesome and wonderful, but there's other strategies that you can go about. Just having you can do a little bit harder of a cut for a short period of time and then like reverse. And so then you get some more food, but
S'mores.
you can do it s'more. You really are thinking about all the sugar.
That's bad.
So then you can do multiple cycles of a cut that way, as opposed to, so there's a lot of different strategies that you can use. And yeah, refeed days aren't for everyone.
So if you guys have ever struggled with that, know that you're not alone. Counting macros is very hard, but rewarding.
It's not, it doesn't have to be. I mean, it gets easier.
Yeah,
the longer you do it, the easier it gets. But there's some times where I think it's good, you might just need to take a mental break from it too. I'm really analytical, and so I like to count my macros all the time just because I have no concept of how much. My biggest thing is getting enough protein. So I have no concept of how much protein I'm eating if I'm not actually logging it. I'm like, I don't know. Did I have 50 grams or 250 grams? I don't know.
That was a lot.
Yeah, I don't eat that much. But, yeah. So if you guys have questions about refeed day, and if they would be beneficial for you, or anything like that, or why you would do them, reach out to us. We're happy to talk.
Yeah. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see my wilderness skills in catching prey, and you can watch us talk about Mary's problems on Empowered by Iron. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will check you next week.
Bye, guys. If you like what you heard today, please help us connect with other female badasses. We would love if you would leave us a review on iTunes, tell your friends about us, visit our website, which is empoweredbyiron.com. You can find each of us on Instagram. Mary is at MaryMo_92, and Kristin is at Kristin with an I, Lander. Future topics will include nutrition, programming and training, mental health, and just general female badassery.
Yeah, so let us know what you want to hear. If you have any input, that'd be awesome. And guys, this is Empowered by Iron. We want it to be a resource and an outlet for women who are finding their confidence, their independence, and their strength through iron. So thank you for listening. Thank you for checking in. And until next time, I'm Mary.
I'm Kristin.
And this is Empowered by Iron.